Hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Blues Down Under with the Mancunian Way. I'm your host, Patrick. We are going to be dissecting, obviously, the tragedy of Orlando, which was the match against Al Hilal. But first things first, a man who certainly, doesn't shy away from his emotions, Mr. Alan. Sir Alan, how are you, mate?
I'm all right now. I've calmed down now. I'm okay.
Should have never got worked up in the first place, given the way you were treating this tournament. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I was just pissed off at the performance, to be honest with you, mate.
Yeah.
And the way they
and that's why we're putting a filter on you today. We're not going to talk about the positives of the game because never mind what was said, never mind what was done. I think you're just one cog in just one small cog in a very big machine, the machine of negativity, basically, that was going around online. Mate, as everybody knows, I don't have Twitter, I don't have X, but my God, some of the things I was saying, or some of the things that people showing me, Jesus God. Never mind. Anyway, as I said, we're here for positivity. So I know a lot of you questioning why the hell's Alan here, but anyway, Rich should be joining us at some point. He's just out doing family duties at the moment, and we may get Martin on in some capacity at some point later in the show as well too. But let's see who's in the building at the moment. Kathy's in. Always good to see you, love. Thank you. And SOS so far. Thank you very much. Have people stop losing their minds? No, that's why we got Alan on. So look, we take the match away. Obviously we are going to kind of be like, a bit of a slow news week at the moment. It's probably going to take a little while before any other news about the club sort of starts gathering steam at the moment. So for the sake of it, let's just get the Al Hilal nonsense out of the way. Obviously Manchester City were playing their round of 16 match yesterday in Orlando against Al Hilal of Saudi Arabia. It was a Pep versus new manager Simeone Inzaghi matchup, basically a rematch of the 2023 Champions League final in terms of managers. I'll get to the lineups in that firstly, but do you think, Alan, we talked about this match, and do you think hindsight's a wonderful thing? Do you think we sort of, maybe in a way, some of the fan base was sort of talking down on Al Hilal a little bit? Because I suppose we talk about, Saudi Pro League, we talk about Asian Conference, but at the end of the day, you got to look at what they had on paper, and unfortunately ended up reflecting kind of what we saw out in the field.
Well, I'll be honest with you. When I went to watch the game, I looked at our lineup and thought, well, he's rested a few of our better players, in my opinion, as it is right now, i.e. the new signings. Cherky, Foden wasn't on the pitch. He had Gundogan and Bernardo in the central midfield, which I thought that could be iffy. Yeah, and he played Reinders at number 6 at the start of the game, which he's not an out and out number 6. he's a more of number 8. So I thought they struggled in that space. And when the game started, he played obviously Doku and Savio on the wide areas.
So I'll quickly go through the lineups, Alan. It was Edison goal, back forward Mateus Nunes, Ruben Diaz, Josh Gvardiol, Ryan Aït-Nouri, midfield of Okay Gundogan, Bernardo Silva, Reinders, Savinho, Erling Haaland, and Jeremy Doku.
See, I've always thought, and watching him last year and this tournament, that when Doku plays with Haaland up front, Savinho, they struggle to find him. When Mamouche is in the team, we do better. For some reason, it seems to work, right? Even though you might not think that. I think Doku's still an impact player. Even though he's played all right, I thought that the first half we created a lot of chances, which was good, but we got caught a few times in the first half on the counter. And I said to a few people in the pub, we're getting caught here a few times on the counter attack, especially down the channels. All right, I thought we were getting caught there, and that's how it started in the second half, and that's what we got them done. It reminded me of the Sporting Lisbon game when we played them, how much we got caught down the channels. The midfield players couldn't get out to them when the ball was played out with a long ball, and that was to me was the biggest issue why we had problems.
I want to talk about the first half because it's not without saying that we certainly had some opportunities, and I think given another day, if we had a bit more execution, we could have easily had the game even out of sight by the first half, but at the end of the first half. But I've got to say, I mean, the manner in which Al Hilal came out in that second half was just I think it completely caught us off guard. I don't know if you felt the same, but I felt like they almost put us in a false sense of security, basically, in that first half, in a way. They had opportunities to break, but they certainly didn't show up with the same sort of vigor as they did in the second half. So it was again. I think Inzaghi was doing the typical Italian manager sort of thing of trying to out tactic Pep, and
he did. He ended up paying off. Yeah, he schooled him. He worked out what City were doing, and worked out how to get around it. And to be fair, he did work it out. And we looked all over the place in the second half, especially when they countered. We looked terrible. I think, and that was more of why I was getting. I remember turning around and said, we're going to get, in the first half, I said to a few people, we're going to get beat here because we look vulnerable. We were all right going forward, but we look vulnerable on the counter big time.
I felt like some of the players who started looked a little bit out of place compared to what they'd done the previous 2 or 3 matches. I mean, Ryan just didn't seem his usual self. Given a small sample size, of course, but he didn't. It seemed like he had to play a little bit of a deeper role than what he was with over the last few games. Nouri's didn't quite have the impact on the game as I was expecting, or certainly like what he did in against Juve or Alain or what we did. So to me, it just seemed like maybe the sort of run of little short run of form basically sort of come to an end for some of the players.
I just thought that Ryan played a 6. We played without a CDM really, an actual natural CDM. Why he didn't play Gonzalez, I don't know. Do not know. When Rodri's not 100% fit, which he wasn't, you play Ryan. You play Gonzalez, Nico Gonzalez in there. I'm sorry, you bought him for 60 million. He should be playing him. So I'm angry about that. I was angry about that. And
remember too, Nico wasn't meant to be a number 6. He's meant to worst case cover a 6, but it's always a support role, whether it's double pivot. Whether Bernardo tracks back or whether he double pivots with like a Gundogan or a Reinders he can never do it on his own. They tried to do it on his own against Alain and he got ambushed.
Yeah.
So it's very, very niche about what he does, just because obviously that's the difference between players like Nico G and players like Rodri. Rodri can do can do the work of 2 players at once, basically.
It was alarming to see how easily they opened us up, and they did open us up easily. But it wasn't just they were all over the shop. They really were defensively. The defense was exposed because our midfield was poor.
Yep.
And that was my personal feeling, and I saw it a bit in the first half. I remember texting Daps about it, saying we're going to get done here. This is dumb. I said, honestly, you watch, and we did get done. Inzaghi spotted it, and he knew exactly what to do. Exactly.
Yeah, let's get on to the first goal anyway. So it was some decent play though, and some decent build-up. But obviously, the talk about obviously was it wasn't a handball, and I'm going to say, for the majority of us in the pub, we were convinced that it was a handball because, if you follow the law, if you follow the law of the rule of thumb, that's what it should have been. It should have been brought back. And I think the only reason why the referee, and by the way, I think he changed his mind about 30 times in about 30 seconds, the way it was carrying on after getting ready for the kickoff again, the restart. But also too, you got to remember, I think Nori doesn't do anything wrong in the fact that he's got his arm down and he's also looking away from the ball when the ball's played to him. So it's one of those things again where it's like the player's done nothing wrong. No. But at the same time, it's like the rule of the game would suggest that should have been a handball. And
I honestly, when they showed the replay, I thought it was handball.
Yeah, I can be honest with you. If it happened against us, I think we'd be throwing stuff. Yeah.
Oh, well, absolutely. Right, yeah. Absolutely.
Who else is in here this evening? Costa. Yeah, let's see who else. So yes, Governor's in. Even mate, how you doing? Costa in. Yep. Playing Rangers out of position. 35-year-old Gundogan. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it was a bit weird, that one for me. I know we've got to be careful with Rodri. I think capacity and that warm weather conditions can be an underlying factor. But yeah, it's an interesting one. Costa in. I've also tagged your previous comment about the goalkeepers. We'll get onto that a bit later. But firstly, we'll just talk about the match. And I did say at the top of the show we try and be positive about things, but I think we got to acknowledge where we went wrong before we realised some of the things that we did right. And I've got to say what Pep said after the game, where he did say there was a lot of things we did right, and certainly a lot of those things that we did right were missing from last season. So I suppose you've got to take a little bit of that into account as well, haven't you?
We were all right going forward. I just thought we were all right going forward. We did.
You've got to like the change of dynamics we have going forward now too.
Oh, we have, but we did
because we got a bit of everything there, didn't we? We got the usual from Haaland, and then we got the whole rotating sort of around the front three, sort of your turn to false nine when it was Marmoush and Foden and that, and then Cherki came in like a maverick in the latter stages of the game and just was pinging balls everywhere and just that sort of thing you wouldn't have seen for the last 2 or 3 seasons.
Well, this is what I don't understand at the start with the selection. Why you wouldn't pick Cherki and Foden in the team? It's beyond me. I'm sorry, but it's beyond me. You don't pick 2 players who are getting on now. That one's 30 and one's even 35 near enough. There's no legs in midfield again. But if you pick like Cherki, see, Gundogan should be played for the last 20 minutes of a game or last 10 minutes when we're winning 2-1, just to keep the ball and pass it around, right? With the experience. That's what he should be playing. That's what he was brought back to do. So I didn't understand why he starts him in that game when you've got Cherki, who's a talented footballer, and Nico Gonzalez, who's got more legs. I don't mind one of them playing in there as long as they've got legs around them. And when they were breaking down the channels, the midfield couldn't cover because they're not quick enough. And that was to me was the biggest issue. I'm not being negative. It's the truth, the way I feel, all right, and what I saw. It's only my view. Doesn't mean I'm right or doesn't mean I'm wrong. It's just my view.
What positives are you taking out of this, though? Because there were some. There were some.
But out of the whole tournament, we've got the new players blooded in. The team spirit seems a lot better. You can see that from the training sessions. And the way they played in the first few games, they've done quite well. Nico Gonzalez, Reinders looks a very, very good player, as long as he plays in his natural position. Looks a very, very good player. Foden looks back to his normal self from 2 years ago, which is very good. I'm pleased about that. I was playing with a smile on his face. So there is positives. Now the players need to go on holiday, put the feet up, relax for a couple of weeks, then get back to training again. I think if it had gone all the way to the final, which, let's be honest, we should have got further in the tournament, but if you got on to the final, I would have been a bit worried about how it would have impacted the players later on in the season starts, as far as fitness and being jaded. So it's done now. We move forward, and the players need to go away now and just have a proper rest, spend some time with the families, and then come back refreshed.
I'd say they certainly earned it, and it's good to know that they're going to have the best part of probably about a month off, really. Because there are some of those players that haven't had more than a month off for probably about 3 or 4 years, so that's going to be a good thing, I suppose. It's only going to benefit them, but I've got to say that if you want to look at it from a perspective of readiness for next season, nothing short of good things coming out of the squad in terms of squad unity, the way the new signings have been bedded in, and that includes the ones that came in January as well too. So they're still finding their way around the club too. So there's a lot of positives about this, and I've got to be honest too, and I hope the chat can back me up on this as well. Where the way I see it is like if they're gelling this well, and they right some wrongs and they get some sort of things sorted out, then again, this is just sort of adding to the positives that I took back in 2017 when we had all these new signings come in, and then we hit the ground running with the Centurion season. So there's a lot to take out of this.
That Captain Harris comment is correct.
Yeah. Again, I think when we're coming down to the whole Nico G or Reinders, I think it comes down to who's around him. Now, if Rodri's around any of those two, I think they're brilliant. If Rodri can't play around those two, then it's very important, I think, who plays a supporting role. Bernardo Silva, absolutely. I don't know if he'll play as regularly as he has previous seasons for 25-26. But again, if he's got the right people around him, then that will go a long way as well.
Yeah, he's fine if he's got legs around him. But I just thought the side they picked wasn't right in that game, and it panned out that way that we created a lot of problems ourselves by the players who played in certain positions. We actually caused our own problems, and that was the mistake. And I said to everyone, we had this issue 8 months ago, and I don't mind people making mistakes or making a mistake. It happens. But when you don't learn from them, that's a worry, and that's what struck me. If we didn't learn from November and October, it came back to haunt us. But, at the end of the day, we move on. Question for you: do you think we need a right fullback, proper one?
There's not exactly. I don't know. It's one of those things. Evening, by the way, Ozzy.
Ozzy,
yeah, it's Blues Down Under, but we're allowed. It's Blues Down Under, but we're allowed a different sort of Ozzy on this show. You know how we are.
G'day, mate.
Yeah, look, I don't know. It is one of those things. Again, I think in the same way that I believe that John Stones is going to stay around because I think the quota, the skeleton quota, and the wages are going to keep him around just another season. In the same way where it's like, well, I think Mateus is going to get the right back role because, yes, we are looking at the market. But again, it comes down to we don't want to pay for our top preference. We're not going to pay that ridiculous money for our number one preference in Livramento. Yeah. The market's dead because we're not hearing any links to any other right backs / right wing backs. And number two, our culture in terms of transfer market is we don't buy players for the sake of buying players. The research, the research and everything that we do is extensive. Now, taking that into account, I've said this before and I'll say it again. What we're doing now in terms of operational work in the club under Viana is completely different to the way that Cheeky does it. I'm not just saying about the emotional attachment of players and him being able to handle outgoings a lot better than, say, Cheeky would. I mean that I think we're going to see a lot more of that Portuguese league style where you use exceptional scouting and you use like projected figures based on how players are playing at age 18 to 20 rather than, trying to go for top of the market players when they're, say, in the mid-20s and that. What we're doing now is we're trying to look at transfer business where we're trying to cut out the middleman. There's no them going to Borussia Dortmund for 10 million and then 2 seasons later they're trying to sell them on to us for 75 million. We're trying to cut that out and, buy these players for a lot less. Albeit there will be some hit and miss. Yeah. I totally get that. But again, I think the fact that we've got a lot of the pieces in place over this transfer market so far, we're not just going to go and buy for the sake of buying it. I think we're still going to be willing to wait it out if we have to and then make do with what we've got. And again, if anybody's got a problem with that, well then why don't they have a problem with Fabian Delph in the Centurion season? Why don't they have a problem with Zinchenko and Formidables? Yes, they're not your first preference, but they still did a bloody good job. And I think that's the way we need to look at Nunes, because he is going to have a slightly different dynamic, and you can't take anything away from what he's been able to do in terms of improving his game and not throw the toys out the pram either and give himself a chance of actually trying to be a starting member on this team, albeit it wouldn't be his initial desire when he signed for the club, but at least he's making something of his career at City so far, and you got to give him credit for that.
I do think, I know how Ozzy thinks, but I do think we need someone in our back four who's got a lot of pace, and we haven't got one.
Talking of pace, Aditya obviously talks about views on Doku and Savio's lack of goal scoring ability. Other teams have goal scoring wingers like Salah, Elise, Yamal, Vinny, and Doku has scored 15 goals in 88 matches for Manchester City. I'll quickly say some of what I think. I think at the end of the day, I think you've got a combination of raw talent in terms of Doku, and you've also got a combination of with Savinho trying to adapt your game to the English way. We've got to remember too that these guys are out and out wingers. They're not like what I like to call expansive forwards, like you had with, say, Sterling, Sane, Centurion season, Formidables, where they could just play almost like a support role to Aguero, and if one wasn't assisting, the other was scoring, or vice versa, basically. So I don't know if that's something that they've played in their game growing up, where they just play expansive, they play wide. It's all about crosses and beating your defender and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So I think it's a different keys for different locks in a way, and I don't know what Pep's intentions are going forward in terms of how he wants to use these guys as effective means, whether it's goal scoring or just creating assists or anything like that. But yes, I, in my personal opinion, I still prefer if we had attackers that worked in the same vein as like a Sane or a Sterling worked, because I just think we work better in that sort of way. I think we work. It works in a way where the tempo, the tempo as a whole in terms of the squad actually works a lot better. When you've got players like Savio or Doku who can just bomb down wings, but then they've got nobody supporting them, whether it be on an overlap or centrally, then you're sort of wasting your resources. You're wasting your attacking resources. And like, I'm not going to turn around and say, yeah, I want Sterling back, I want Sane back, or I want to go to that sort of thing. I just think we haven't quite figured out the dynamic yet in terms of how those two are meant to play. And I know we scream out about Savio should play on the left more, because when he does it, he's brilliant. But it's such a small sample size. And obviously Pep doesn't want to go near that for whatever reason. And I think it's one of those things that we'll never truly find out.
He is stubborn.
He's very stubborn with that. Yeah, you can't lie about that. But I mean, it's funny because I've always said, like, there's certain things. If I ever get a chance to talk to Pep, like if he retires, there's only a handful of questions I would have asked him about his career or his time at City. But one of those things I would love to say maybe in a few years' time was like, why didn't you play Savio at the left more? Because from what we'd seen, whether it be at Girona under Michel or the rare few games that he's played in just over a season on the left wing, has been nothing short of spectacular.
What do you think, Ozzy? What happened the other night?
You want the other night, or do you want me to rebuff what Pat's been saying?
Well, your opinion.
I think just addressing kind of Pat's issues. I don't have any kind of issue really with what Pat just said. But for me, I've been saying this for a long time, and I've said this a lot about Doku. Is that, you know, his first season he was all right. You know, he had some impact.
Yeah.
I've written off his second season because last season it was dreadful for everybody. So for me, this season is kind of his second season in a lot of respects. You know, if you want to be a little bit more harsh, I suppose you could say it's a season and a half, maybe.
Yeah.
there is talent, and I think you can see that during this Club World Cup. To be honest, I think he's been one of our best players.
Yeah.
Of the old guard, as in like, not the new guys who've just come through the door. I think there's been he's been one of the shining stars, and I think his link up with Ait Nouri has been brilliant when we've seen that.
Yeah.
So for me, he can produce, he can do assists, he can do goals. I'm not saying he does need to improve, he needs to get better at it, but he's still so young and he's so talented that I think the whole Doku getting rid of thing, I think is ridiculous, if I'm honest. So it ain't gonna happen. He ain't gonna go anywhere because he's such a great talent that I think if we see him go somewhere else and he starts tearing up, we'll all be going, "What have we done?" Because he has got that talent. With Savio, again, he's just had one season with us, and we're forgetting that. Do you know what I mean? He was played more probably than he was supposed to play last season, if we're being brutally honest. Now, yes, you could argue and say he's better on the left than he is on the right, but he's been played on the right, and that's what Pep wants, and that's what Pep thinks. None of us are going to change what he sees. Now, I will admit that I don't think he's been brilliant of late. He's that great goal against Juventus, it was brilliant, but it was one of those where 9 times out of 100, you're still only going to score that once, realistically. He hasn't got that in his bag all the time. So he's got to be way more consistent than he is. Now, I think having the likes of Cheeky, who I think probably will start on the right a little bit more than through the middle, but I think he'll drift into the middle. I think that's giving him a bit of a kick up the arse that, you're not just going to continue to play next season on the right. If you're not assisting, you're not getting those goals, Cheeky's going to take your spot, or Foden's going to take your spot. We didn't have so many of those options last season. Do you know what I mean? We were having to rely on Savio quite a lot, and it was his first season, like I said. When it comes to last night, I think, in honesty, you can't look at the game in two halves like we always do, but as in, like, the first half, I thought, we played well. There were moments where it wasn't so good, but I think predominantly we were in charge a lot. And I think in the second half, I think we just have to give credit to the opposition. Do you know what I mean? They saw City's weakness.
They caught us off guard.
Yeah, and
at the worst time of the game when we're trying to settle again.
You can blame some individual players because some individual players are to blame. Do you know what I mean? But I also think it was on Pep as well. Like, for me, the substitutes he made, first substitutes, were a bit of a mistake. Like, I didn't understand those substitutes. And so far, I haven't seen anybody really who's agreed those substitutes. Like, it just felt like he was letting... And you're right what you said, Alan. Like, we don't have any defenders with real pace, especially from last night. Especially when he took off Guardiola, who I think has got a little bit more pace than Diaz. It was just like, well, we're going to get done and done over and over again on that counter attack.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it just didn't make a lot of sense to me. This is why I do think we need, and I know a lot of people are calling for Kuznetsov. Now, I think he's a fantastic player, but he's still so young, and I can
undisciplined.
And I can understand why Pep
can't be the starting right back if you're going to have those in your game, or you haven't got rid of those out of your game.
And I think it's also quite telling as well that as soon as he gets a yellow card, Pep pulls him off, and that goes for a lot of players lately at the back where they get a yellow card. He just doesn't seem to be able to trust, which should ring alarm bells for a few people, that what is going on, that he doesn't feel that he can rely on some of these defenders. And I think Nunes, as you said, Pat, I think Nunes is doing the best job he can in a position that, is not his natural position. Last season, he had some outstanding moments and he had some really poor moments. But again, I just don't think we could put us on Nunes.
Two things. Do you think we need to get a proper right back? And two, do you think we're missing a fully fit Stones still? I think we are missing a fully fit Stones.
I mean, I think we can all agree. I'll address Stones. Like, I think we can all agree. I mean, Stones is fit.
Brilliant.
He is brilliant. He's one of the best centre backs ever played for City. But that's the problem with Stones. He's just not. You can't rely on his fitness. Like, he plays any more than 3 games, and that's it. He gets injured again, and that's a consistent pattern. So he's unreliable.
He's why?
Oh, God, yeah.
I thought the only thing we disagree upon is you want Vincent Kompany, and I don't know. I want Fabregas in. No, I don't know.
Why do you? Can I ask you a question? What's Fabregas done as a manager?
I mean, small sample size, but he's basically got Como into almost competing for European spots. You know, and they're compared to. I wouldn't say they're on a shoestring budget, but I mean they have to go up against all the northern clubs, and it's not easy for them. I must say. I don't know. It's a small sample size, and people are touting him as like maybe like another version of Xabi Alonso or something like that. I haven't done enough research yet, but you know, Ed was flogging the Fabregas agenda the other day, and I was mocking him for it. So I thought we'll just continue with that.
Fair enough.
But yeah, just to say, Alan, I do think we need a right back. And I do think we need a right back with pace, because I think if we're going to continue to play a high line, and we've always played a high line, but we always had Walker.
Correct.
Walker, regardless of what he did last season, he was still probably not the best right back the Premier League has ever seen in so many respects.
Yeah,
I mean, definitely for City. And that was what we had him for, because his pace was brilliant, and he could put a tackle in. You know, at times he was really good.
Age doesn't matter if he Kurabasi, but Kurabasi came through La Masia.
Yeah,
he came through La Masia. That's the same as you could talk about any player who came through the academy. Some either get it, some don't. So I get the comparison, but yeah, it just shows how many from the academy actually make it and how many actually don't. Yeah.
I take it City not even looking at the Juve fullback that didn't play against us, by the way. Cambiasso, what his name was, whatever his name was.
Cambiasso, he did play against us.
No, the right fullback didn't play against us.
Cambiasso.
The guy that played for Juve in played last season.
He came off
the bench. Why are we not looking at him as a fullback? Because we put an offer for January.
Predominantly, he can play. I mean, I think he's been playing a lot as left back for Juventus. He can play right back, but again, it comes to the English quota. You know, we just don't have enough of it.
We're going to have to.
I think if we're going to lose the likes of Stones or a Kanji, not a Kanji, Ake, then we need more.
They're going to stay because of the English quota. Rico,
I don't know about that.
We'll have to. Rico will stay.
Rico's staying because I think there's a new contract that's going to start.
Aki will stay because he was a youth player at Chelsea, so he'll stay because of that now. And I think the other players that John Stones will stay because he's English. We haven't got enough English players.
And this is why City have been looking at English players to bring in.
Yeah.
But the problem we've got is that the players we want, the clubs know we want them, and they're putting a pretty penny on because one, they're English, and two, they ultimately know we want these players. So
Rico Lewis came through. Rico Lewis came through the academy as a midfield player. Did not come as a fullback. And he's not a fullback. He's a right midfield.
He is, and I think that's what people forget. He's been played as a right back for most of his, adult career at City, but he is a midfielder. He's just very, I think people forget that sometimes he actually played really quite well at right back. It was just last season, and again, I don't know how many times I have to say this, but how many players did well last season?
We're talking about Rico, aren't we, Ozzy?
Yeah.
The thing that concerned me was I felt like in some games he was getting figured out.
Yeah, there's no denying that.
Yeah.
But again, because I think he's very technical, he's very good on the ball. But the problem is that I think for his size and his physicality, he just hasn't got it completely. He's still growing as an adult. Do you know what I mean? I think he's got a little bit more to give yet, but he's never going to be, 6 foot whatever and built. You know what I mean? That's just not his stature. But I do feel that if we're going to have the back line that we've had for most of Pep's time, is we need a right back or a left back or a centre back with pace who can make sure that we're not done on the counter.
Yeah, absolutely, spot on.
Because you can't rely on the wingers because we have seen Doku track back, Savio to an extent, but they're just
not going to be able to get there if a long ball comes down the channel. Which, how many times have we seen Walker get us out of jail? A lot.
Yeah. And we know that Agnori isn't going to be that player.
Kuzanov is good enough to start for us. Yes, okay, he has started a couple of games, but how many times have we seen Pep bring him off when he gets a yellow card?
Yeah, Kuzanov is only started.
There's a big concern about that discipline, and he'll eradicate from his game, or he'll learn to control that. But 20 years old, when you're a bit boot heavy, coming in with a lot of sliding challenges, I think you've got to be careful. I think you've got to be careful with Kuzanov. He's one worth protecting because the reason we got him was because other big clubs were snooping around.
Yeah,
we beat them to him.
Kuzanov has only started 2 games.
He's a project player.
Yeah, he really
slowly bedded in, and if it goes about the right way, in 2-3 years' time, we'll be singing his praises. Exactly the same as what we did with Phil Foden in the first couple of Pep seasons there too, begging for him to be played, and then we took our time. And when he came in, he was brilliant.
And when does a centre back start to peak?
Mid-20s.
Mid-20s, yeah.
And can you name me another centre back in Europe that is 20 and is a world class, world star?
Yeah, it was before, but they mentioned that Koulibaly at Barca, and again, it's like, yes, good defender, still very raw.
Exactly.
And if that's a problem, then why did Inter score 4 goals against him in the Champions League semi-final?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. There isn't anybody out there 20 years old or thereabouts who's a centre back playing, game out, in the starting 11 for a big European club, because they just don't exist. Kuzanov needs time, and he'll be given that time to settle in. He will get game time this season. It's guaranteed that he will, because he needs to learn. But it's going to be drips and drabs, as you said. It's going to be like Foden.
Not only that, if he's playing centre half, the City, he can't speak fluent English yet. So how is he going to communicate with players? So he needs to be given time so he can pick that up. That's important, a centre half. Very important.
Yeah, and he is taking English lessons. He's been actually, most of his time when he's not training, he's actually putting a lot of effort into his English. So
correct.
DJ and one, big up for being on the show again, mate. Appreciate it. Look, why does the right back have to be homegrown if there's such limited options? I think it's just because Livramento seems to be the best option. But again, it goes against what the club do. They won't spend way more than what they value the player at. And Newcastle don't want to sell because they made the Champions League is the reason why they're keeping him. They're going to hold on to as many players as they can. It's just the way it is. And you know how it is. We do not spend for the sake of spending. The exception might be if Viana has got something scouted that we don't know about, which is every possibility.
Yeah,
it's every possibility. That's what the next month or so is going to show for us, basically.
I think it also depends on who he gets rid of and how much money he can raise. Because if he can raise 50-60 million from sales, what we're going to do in the next month, then they may revisit another player as a fullback later on in the year.
Do you know what I'm hoping with Viana, with him coming in, is that he's going to start seeing some of these really young, talented players because I think something that we have been guilty of, especially over the last few markets, is that we've been having to react because we suddenly don't have the players, for key positions. And I'd like us to start scouting and getting some of these gems that he's already proven it with the likes of Kuznov and Reed. I always pronounce his name wrong. Riaz wrong. I want to see that more and more in the transfer windows, is where he starts picking up these players and I'm hoping that it's not just going to be completely young. I'm hoping that he can find, a 23, 24-year-old as well that can come in and do a job, more or less straight away, because, for the last few seasons, we're having to do a massive catch up because we really haven't, spent money on
It is.
We've said this so many times, Alan.
Well, it's our fault, but for a perfectly justifiable reason, because we chase history with the 4 in a row. Yeah. We don't have to chase that 4 in a row. That reset happens in 2023. The day after Istanbul, we start even more players out the door than just Gundogan, Mahrez, and Laporte. There's even more. The reset starts then. Yeah. It's just you can't do the reset and then expect to chase 4 in a row. You have to keep that squad because they can still have some sort of momentum. And I have to admit, Gary Neville was right about he thought the drop off was going to happen after the treble because it's relatable to him. Because the players are a lot of those players are in a position where it's like, well, where do we go from here? A lot of them would be happy to move on. They'd like to try and chase another project somewhere else if they can. But I think the fact that we were chasing quote unquote immortality, no other English club's ever done it before. I can kind of understand where it goes, where it's like, okay, we're going to chase this extra season if it means that we have a drop off for another season or two.
Yeah.
I'm willing to tolerate the fact that we may not win the league this season, this coming season, 25-26. I personally think it's Liverpool's to lose, and I think it's Liverpool's to lose by a reasonable margin at the moment. Of course, the next few months may prove me wrong. We'll wait and see. But again, I think it comes down to we chase that 4 in a row, and I have absolutely no regrets that we did chase that 4 in a row. But sometimes chasing one can set you back a bit longer than usual. So we have to face that. We have to accept that.
The problem is,
I don't think we'll win it, but I think as long as we're competitive, that's what I want.
Yeah, it's definitely Liverpool's to lose until I'm proven otherwise.
I agree with you.
Oh yeah, definitely. The problem is that for me, you only kind of look what Liverpool have done as champions. They've gone out there and they've spent big, and they've brought in players that they felt were going to ultimately.
They haven't rested on the laurels. They're brilliant.
My hat goes off to them because that's what true champions do. We didn't do that after doing 4 in a row though, Pat. We brought in, Savio, and that was it really. We didn't really strengthen, and that's probably the biggest problem and the biggest criticism that you can give the club is that they just sat on the laurels and just really didn't think, and we deserved, in all honesty, to lose the title.
Did you think the 115 was playing a part in that? Because I did.
I was just thinking that actually. Yeah, I think it's always going to be an underlying factor, especially in the last 18 months or so. Now, what we've done the last 6 months is different, but I think previous 12 months to that, there was a sense of wait and see.
Yeah. Do you know what, Pat? I slightly disagree. And the reason I slightly disagree is because if there is any sort of hesitation from the club to think that actually they're going to be found guilty, then that's a problem. Do you know what I mean? They have said from the very beginning that they're innocent and they'll prove it in court. Now, for me, if you're innocent and you know you're innocent, then you should be going full guns and getting on with business and carrying on. Because if you've done nothing wrong, then you know what I mean. Like then you haven't got to worry so much.
Devious Ducky thinks this performance against Al Hilal will determine the rest of the season, mate. I hope you're here in May because if we do see armpits, I'll be coming back to you.
Oh yes, definitely. You cannot judge, that performance against Al Hilal as how things are going to progress over a season because I don't. Because there are a number of factors. It's whether you want to look at it, it's either the very much a glorified competition where it doesn't really matter that much, or yes, it matters much, but we're forgetting that a lot of these players are still coming off last season. They haven't had a proper true break, and now they're going to get it. Do you know what I mean? Now they can just spend
I'm
time with
actually glad.
their families.
After I calmed down the other day, I'm actually glad to go on holiday now. I really am.
Yeah, because I think that, I mean, there was some. I think Pep had come out himself and said that he felt that if we went all the way in the competition, at the start of the season, they'd hit the ground running because they wouldn't be. They'd have form and rhythm going forward. It's getting into kind of looking at like Christmas where we may start kind of tailing off a little bit.
Jaded.
Yeah. So now we don't have to kind of see that. Now they can have a proper break. They can get into. They'll probably play some sort of pre-season because they can't go in cold into the Premier League. They'll probably either do a fixture against a Champions League, a Championship side, or they'll do a.
I don't even want to leave in the academy, Ozzy. I don't even want to leave the academy.
Yeah, well,
maybe a pre-season in like I don't know, like no further than like the Netherlands or Germany or something like that.
Yeah.
If something like that were to occur. But nothing like that. There is absolutely no reason for them to go abroad or majorly abroad.
No, and I also think you've also got to think.
I've got to say, not playing the Community Shield is that nice little extra week of restart as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But I also think other clubs will already have their pre-seasons kind of managed. They'll already have clubs they're already playing against. So I think City will be coming to the game late. They'll have to play somebody who's either got time to spare or doesn't have that kind of busy pre-season. So I don't think it will be flung-fard, trips abroad anywhere particular.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, they're not coming to Australia.
Oh well. 2029 Club World Cup. Here we go.
Yeah.
Well. Let's see what else is in here. I'll just saved a couple of comments before. Costa in, obviously going to ask this question from the get-go. Would you guys rather keep Edison or Ortega? I think it's. Sorry, Matt. I think it's made up, but it looks like Ortega's probably going to go, if anyone.
Do you know what? I think we should sign a number one, even if Edison stays, to really compete with him. Because if he's performing the way he is at the moment, he'll get dropped.
Weird thing is, I did hear something about we were going to try and offer him another bump contract. So we'll have to wait and see.
For me, like. He says his head's in the game. He wants to stay. The problem is that for 2 windows now, there's been rumblings that actually he wants to go to Saudi. He wants to earn a big payday. So for me, if he isn't going to sign a bumper contract, soon rather than later.
But the Saudis have never come back since then.
No, I know. This is
kind of a bit bizarre. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe we're just not getting. Maybe that news just isn't filtering through. Maybe there has been offers, but we don't know really. But for me, I just feel that for his head to be fully in the game, he's got to sign a new deal with City. Otherwise, I don't want him on his last year because I just don't. We've seen it that his head has just completely gone at times.
Going back to what I said about post-treble players, do you think? I get the sense that Edison is like almost at the top of the list of players that are basically since that treble have been like, well, where do I go from here? I think his mindset has always been like he's like, well, I've done everything, which I mean, it's probably not a good headspace to do if you're trying to continue winning titles. And I get that maybe, but that's sort of the maverick sort of attitude I think he's had towards everything. I think the other thing is, I kind of feel bad for him too because I think his performances in the Champions League that season were completely ignored. All the focus was on, the 4-0 against Madrid and that, and just all the goals that Haaland had scored during the season and things like that. And I think everybody just forgets that. Yes, he had a great defense in front of him, but at the last, when you needed him in last ditch effort, he was incredible, undefeated in an entire Champions League, Champions League season, conceding 5 goals across the entire tournament. It's remarkable what he did, and I'm really disappointed that it went so under the radar.
Yeah, I mean, I also think like he feels, and you're right in everything you said. I do think he feels that he's not getting the recognition he deserves. I think, obviously, for country, Arsenal's ahead of him, and I think at times
I think that's fair as well. I think that's fair.
I think it's possibly fair, but I think that's the problem is Brazil have got 2 great goalkeepers, exceptional. and Alisson has just picked into that number one spot, you know, pretty much throughout the time the international's been played.
Alisson's the best shot stopper, isn't he?
He is. He's a better shot
crazy
stopper.
how the
We've always
national
said
team
that.
works. They haven't got even a shell of the squad that they used to have, like from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But now they've got, you know, back then their goalkeepers were above average at best, basically. And now they've got two fantastic goalkeepers, and now they haven't got the team to back it up.
Yeah,
It's funny how the word works like that. But you know, we talked about Edison is now going. I also had JMCFC put this one in as well too. I think Gundo might have been in the shop window for these matches as well.
Well, that's the point. A question for you. If we have to try and raise some money and taking the effect of the English quota, which we do need to keep some English players, I think. How are we going to raise 50 million to get rid of a few people? You've got Jack Grealish, we could raise 30 to 40 million. I would say Gundo 10, you would say. Who else would you look at to raise
McAtee
money?
probably out the door as well.
Who?
McAtee.
Yeah.
Yes. 25 million for him.
I feel like the question now becomes which German club does he go to?
Yeah. And I also think you forget that there's been a number of sales already as well. I think the problem we've got, like especially with Grealish, is that, you know, he's on such high wages that I think it's probably going to be a loan with an option to buy.
You still have to pay for a loan, don't you? You still have to pay like 5-10 million.
Yeah, but again, it's not going to bring in the money maybe. But I also think, you know, we haven't spent a great deal over the last few windows before January. So I still think there's probably a lot of money to play with. Plus, we didn't spend a lot on the 3 big signings that have just come in. 4 signings, I mean, it was undisclosed, but I think the goalkeeper, I don't think it was a massive transfer. So
Stones is going to stay because of his English quota and because of his salary. So I can't
James says a good one here too about Ruben and Bernardo. You know, they also played the Nations League before this too. Surely they're shattered. I think, I think if we went back and had a look at a replay of that game, yeah, sure, Ruben did his best during that game as good as he could, but he looked like a man who just needed another break. Never mind going off to the Amalfi Coast for a few days with Maya Jama. I think he needs more time off. And he's bloody earned it. He's earned it, let's be honest.
Let's be honest with you. He's not doing much resting with his girlfriend, is he?
No, don't go there.
Don't go there, Alan.
Don't go there. Yeah. Well, anyway, it's just let's see. Chris, Liverpool will drop off. We ended with fair points total considering. If our midfield gets creative, we'll be right there again. It's possible. It is possible, but again, I think until we start getting optimistic about how we're going to play, we have to assume that it's Liverpool's to lose right now. Chris, I think we're a bit. Ducky again. Geraldine was pissed off. Yeah, I think he had a heavy bet with that Al Hilal owner who was sitting the other side of Infantino. So he's probably played some double or nothing on that game. Who knows? But yeah. Team will be off for at least 2 weeks, a month before the season kicks off. Yeah. Again, as I said, I think the week off, an extra week not having to do Community Shield is going to be great as well too. Stefan's looking out. We just talked about the goalkeepers. Viana, we need better defenders. Well, why do we get Reece and why do we get Vitor Hayes and Kuznov then, Ducky? I like to bring DJ in. I like the idea of bringing someone to compete to start. Can you just elaborate a little bit on that one, to be honest, mate? Yeah. That was that. Anything else come up? I mean, I think we just talked about Ruben, but there was talk about him. Looks like he's about to receive a new contract as well. And say what you want about maybe what he did against Al Hilal doesn't take anything away from the fact that we have one of the best defenders in the Premier League, and 28 years old, and we forget that he's been here for 5 years already. And the guy, given the level of fitness that he keeps up. He's a proper athlete and a trained professional and a great leader. I do hope when we get to see this guy gets to see up, well into the end of his football career at City, basically, because he's earned the right to be here. He's earned the right to be part of the captaincy team, and I do hope they give him something that will make him stay here for a long time to come.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you need to add on that, Ozzy?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I think a lot of people are forgetting what he's done for City. A lot of people are still judging him on last season and this, Club World Cup, and I just think it's unfair. He needs time to rest, to recuperate. This whole squad needs that. And I think, there are a lot of good things about, this Club World Cup for City. There's been some times where we've seen some brilliant play. There's been some times where off the pitch when they've been training, you can see that togetherness, that they're really getting on well. There's a lot, the backroom staff are actually, doing their job. They're not sitting around and not speaking to the players. All the new coaching staff are actually there and they're speaking to the players and, making the effort. Yeah. And this is what they need. Do you know what I mean? They need to have this going into next season, that they're all thinking, yeah, it was a big shame we got knocked out, but you know what? Next season, we are going to kick it and we are going to, try and win whatever we can.
At the end of the day, the only trophy that I want next season is to try and get our title back. I don't think it's going to happen, but that's what we've got to try and get.
Yeah, and I think, for me, Liverpool would deserve champions. There's no denying that. They played, they did well, but they weren't challenged. Do you know what I mean? We fell off, and we had a big falling off, but we're Arsenal. If I was Arsenal fan, I'd be kind of, what the hell happened? Because we've been chasing City for 3 seasons, and we've been so close. And then they completely they collapsed themselves. But they collapsed for no particular good enough reason like we did. So if I was an Arsenal fan, I'd be asking bigger questions like, what the hell is going on with us? And we're the ones that need to be challenging Liverpool next season.
SOS says players are back 28th of July. I didn't realise it was.
Yeah, it is.
God, if we made the final, so yeah, there would have been it would have only had 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So maybe a silver lining to this.
Oh, there is a big silver lining to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is. I think as well, like the other European clubs, the likes of Real Madrid, the likes of PSG, their leagues are nowhere near like the Premier League. Most of their opposition is nowhere near the quality that the Premier League opposition is. City are playing in every competition. We're playing in the Premier League, we're playing the Champions League, we're playing for the FA Cup, we're playing the Carabao Cup. Real Madrid is all about a Champions League for them. Yes, they'd like to win the league, but their main goal is always the Champions League.
Yeah.
PSG, again, we've always said that it's a bit of a farmer league, the French league. And I think that's a bit unfair because I think there's better opposition there, but they win the league pretty much without a problem. The same with Bayern Munich. It's a lot different in the Premier League, and it's not just. I'm saying this just about us. Liverpool have got to do this. Arsenal have got to do this. Newcastle will have to have found this difficult when they win the Champions League before this season coming. They found it really difficult because they didn't realise we haven't got the squad. So, that's just something we all have to put in mind, is that these other big clubs, they haven't got the level of competition in their own leagues like we do in the Premier League. There are 7 clubs in the Premier League that are all challenging to win the Premier League. And that's not including the likes of United and Spurs, who completely fell off last season.
I think, yeah, I get what you're saying. I think that's, because what you're saying about your PSGs and your Bayerns is the reason why you've never seen a club win 10 Premier Leagues, in England, basically. But also, too, I think a lot of the time these clubs are very dependent on how their league form is based on how they can sort of compete in other tournaments as well. Because I think we look at PSG's winning the Champions League, and I know Martin doesn't like going on about it too much, but you got to respect what they did. But I mean, besides what they did on the pitch too, I think it also helped them as well, knowing that they wrapped up the league with bloody 6 weeks to spare. So it meant that they could play academy players for half of their league games if they wanted to, and rest all their players, for Champions League as well. It's quite funny actually, because I remember 2020 they made the Champions League final when they played against Bayern. I think they lost to Bayern. I think part of the reason why they were able to compete well in that tournament was because when football came back in Europe, I think they cancelled. They binned the remainder of the French league, so they had all the time and resources at their disposal to just focus on those handful of games that they had in the knockout stages as well. So I think a lot of them, it's like if they're not, I think that they seem to rely on the rest. While unlike City, for example, we prefer to be playing every 3 days and playing at absolute peak every 3 days. We've got the perfect manager to do that, to play it every 3 days as well. And I think for the sake of this new squad going forward, I think the most important thing this season is we try and compete on every single front. Because even if we do fall a little bit short on all 4 trophies, you know that the fact that they're going to be competing so soon and this new squad, this new method in which how we're going to do things as well, just means that you know that we can come back in 12 months' time from now and you can look at it with way more positivity, and you can think, yeah, you know, the players will know where they made the mistakes, and they won't make the same mistake twice. So I think there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to take from these last 12 months, and including the 4 matches in the States, that will certainly right a lot of wrongs next season. I don't know if they'll solve everything, Alan, but they'll certainly send us in the right direction. There's a lot of good things about this.
It's very hard to compete on all fronts now. The way the Champions League being reconstructed, and we play this league format shit. It's going to be very hard. Let's say the League Cup, the Carabao Cup, whatever you want to call it now. It's very hard to compete on that front and the Champions League the way it's been redone. Very hard.
I also think with the Club World Cup as well, like I don't think something like the treble, or the treble and winning, the Club World Cup is going to be ever done again in the Premier League, because I just think with the amount of competitions and the amount of games now, I just can't see it happening again.
Too much.
And what we chase too, it's just that's just reflective in a lot of sports, basically. I mean, Alan, like we'll briefly just touch on cricket. I know Martin's in the chat, so maybe we'll just do it to wind him up. But look at Australia. No, but look at Australia, for example. 07, like when we smashed you like 5-0 in the Ashes, we lost McGrath, we lost Shane Warne, we lost Justin Langer. 3 huge core components of our attack and batting and bowling. And it took us the best part of nearly 5, 6, 7 years to get back to being world beaters again, because you can't replace that sort of thing overnight.
You had 15, 16 years of having the best side, but for that length of time, but like at the moment, your top order's poor. Your middle order and your bowling is brilliant. And teams go through phases. Like the West, it's like the West Indies in the 80s. They were unbeatable in the 80s. And they were superb.
Yeah, they all do. Yeah.
I'm going to bring it slightly back to football, guys, because
No, I know.
Kind of like Martin.
I know. I gave Alan an inch and he took a bloody mile. I can only apologise, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, what I would say is, you look at the Liverpools back in the 70s, the United,
80s, brilliant.
Yeah, you look at United in the 90s and the noughties, and now City are kind of in that moment in time where we have been the dominant team in the Premier League. We've won it more than any other club, and now the likes of Liverpool are starting to kind of cripple, and they didn't win a league title for 30 odd years. United have not won a league title for 13 years now, so it's our moment to shine right now. And we're being competitive. And last season, yes, was a drop off compared to the last few seasons we've had. But unlike United, where they currently are right now, is we've got the infrastructure and we've got the management to actually turn things around and make sure things don't slip off so much that we end up like United. Because I believe the club have got. We all know that eventually Pep is going to leave. And I believe that they will have already started scouting for who they want to replace Pep. You know what I mean? Unlike United, where they just put out a few names in the hat and pull out the first, person. I don't really think there was a proper structure, a proper plan. And City have constantly done that over the last decade and more. You know, they've always had a plan going forward. They always had the plan that we're going to bring in Pep. That was always their plan. And I believe that they've got that plan for the next 10 years going on. And I'm sure they will try and convince Pep to stay another 10 years if they can.
Oh, I see. The next 5-year plan was being made as we were lifting the Champions League trophy. Yeah. Sheikh Mansour was at that ground for a reason.
Yeah.
And the second time he's ever watched his club play live. I was like, he was there. He was there to do some serious business.
Yeah.
Yeah. James CFC says he's curious. And most of the people on the channel in Australia. Now, if you're referring to us, Australian born, Australian bred, bit of a long story why I got in the city. We'll talk about that in another show and another time. Alan's a miserable old gilt from Whitefield who moved out here about 20 years ago, and he's still a miserable old gilt from Brunswick East to Melbourne. And Aussie is just on the show because of his name.
Yeah.
And in terms of the chat, most of the chat is all around the world, and we are so glad to have the whole world here. I know for a fact there are a couple of Aussies. Nick's a shout. Keely, when he's on as well, he's a shout as well too. Most of the Australian Blues that we do have here are all expats. Most of them are expats.
Rich lives in Sydney, and he's an expat like me.
Yeah.
So we're expecting him on.
Governor 66, expat from Moston. He lives up in, it was Harvey Bay, wasn't it, mate? Yeah, he's up in Harvey Bay. It's not too far away from where my family are in Bundy. Yeah. So, but I mean, that's part of the reason why we love doing this show, because the whole world basically is only one click away. And we always look forward to talking our opinions with you about all things City. And, we it doesn't matter whether your passions are high or you're feeling bad about anything. Just come on here and just vent your opinions. But be constructive as well too. Always be willing to accept that sometimes an opinion might change your perspective on how you see certain things as well too. So always be respectful and always have a friendly, mindset about and have a positive and open mindset about, what we think about with this not just the show but the club itself. There's a lot of things that are going to be interesting over the next few weeks, and we can talk about Viana's going to have his work cut out in terms of the outgoings of that. But again, like I said, I'm glad that it's him, because maybe there's going to be no emotional attachment. Maybe it's just going to be so much easier for the club to get these players out the door. But you can't have players come in without them going out. And unfortunately, we all found it difficult to say goodbye to Kev, a month or two ago. There's going to be some other players that we're going to have to see go out the door. And, there is sentimentality. There's going to be so many memories that we tie to these players. And, some of these were our club favourites, and, we had cult followings and things like that. And I think sometimes you have to accept that, this is part of the reason why we love the game, because we also hate when these sort of things happen as well. So, for that matter, I'm interested to see what happens. Again, I would have liked to have seen us go a little bit further forward in the tournament. On a personal level, I kind of don't really care, and I think Alan kind of feels the same way, because we weren't going to get any more 11 a.m. kickoffs, so that could all go in the bin as far as I'm concerned. But besides that, look, I'm just happy all in all that the players are now going to get the best part of a month off. And I do hope that they basically are going to go in there with the sort of mentality that means that they mean business. They want to start the season strong. They've got some important fixtures coming up early in the season as well too. So I'd love to see them playing on the front foot and playing some damn good football. Yeah.
Yeah, we like GM the CFC said, it's a shame that some of the players are going, but they've had the time now. We have to recharge the batteries and get a new team in and build it again. And every team goes through this. Every team, at some point, you have to recharge and get different players in and have a new generation of players. It's the way it goes. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
We saw that with the likes of Aguero, David Silva, Company, Yaya. The list goes on, doesn't it?
Yeah. Can I just say something about David Silva? Obviously, he left to an empty stadium. Does that make you want? Does that make you want to scream out more for a testimonial for him?
Yeah,
because he has bloody earned it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'd like to see him playing with Vincent and Aguero in the same game, so we can all give them a proper send off. They never got the opportunity. Then he did really, but to me, Aguero and David Silva didn't really get that opportunity. So, you know, I'd like to see them play a game at the Etihad. Even if it comes, I'll tell you what, they'd fill it. If they came back and fill it, the ground would be full.
You got to be honest. Like it is hard to find room for testimonials now these days, unless your team doesn't make certain cup competitions and frees up more space, midweek and things like that. But I think we're at a point now where it's like Aguero needs one, David Silva needs one. Sooner or later, Kev's going to have one.
Yeah.
You wonder. I'm at a point where it was like, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I would have said every player deserves a testimonial. Now it's like, I just want them to have something. And if it's some sort of three-way testimonial thing in a similar vein of what Vinny did, where we play some sort of United All-Stars or something like that, and it's all for a charity or something like that, then that's what needs to happen. And, it's a shame we're not able to give the sort of players the send-off they deserve in terms of that sort of personal accolade in a way. I do like what the club does with the statues and the street names and things like that. That's a nice touch, and maybe that's a sort of compromise for not being able to give testimonials. But I think that's the whole reason why you did testimonials. It was focusing around dedication to that player, but at the same time not have to worry about how much game time they were going to get in an actual competitive match because they may not play or play limited time because of tactical reasons. When you play 10 years at the club, you deserve a game dedicated to yourself.
It's like, a lot of people's favourite player is David Silva. He's mine. I always say he's my favourite player that played at City. I'd love to see him have a proper send-off. To leave the pitch to an empty ground was really sad.
It did hurt, I can't lie.
Yeah. I'd love to see him get a standing ovation. Because he does deserve it. I'll say something about Walker. As much as he's left under a bit of a cloud with his personal life, he's been our best right fullback we've had ever.
Yeah. I still don't think we can take that away from him. Do you know what I mean? No. Regardless of what's happened last season and his off-field issues as well, I think as a player, I couldn't agree more with you, Alan.
To be honest with you, he left the country to go and play in Italy because he needed to get out of the country because of what happened in his personal life.
And he needs to do it again.
He needs to do it again now. All right, he made a mess of his personal life. That's for him to try and sort out. And I hope he does.
The same with Jack as well. Like, as much as
absolutely.
Jack, strayed the hell out of us for 2 seasons. We can never forget what he did in the treble.
Yeah, exactly. And also, personally, Jack is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet, and generous and kind. So let's not fall out with him.
No, it hasn't worked out at City properly. Like with all of I think all of us all wished it that he would go on from the treble and kick on and but it just didn't happen. And I think we just sometimes have to accept that.
Yeah.
I hope he moves on.
Whatever he does, he goes plays wherever.
As soon as there's a COVID season, you can even add Aguero to that. Like, he got a send off in front of less than 10,000.
Yeah.
And in fair play, the crowd made you feel like there was about 40,000 in there. They were brilliant that day. But again, these players deserve some sort of good send off. And given the question marks that Aguero's had on himself as well. And now that he is back playing football in some sort of capacity, Alan, I think the time should come that the club needs to sort out a date. It's going to be midweek, of course, but sort out a date and give these players the send off that they well and truly deserve.
Yeah, absolutely. The fans would like to do it.
Yeah, Blue Heart says, correct, Pat. Get David a huge welcome back with a blue testimonial. I think the thing should be sponsored by his wine company as well too, because I've heard that is a quality drop of wine as well. We'll have to get Martin. Maybe that's next month's raffle prize or membership draw. Which might happen with him, by the way. Anyway, it's been quiet, but yes, we'll have to have our pre-season meeting, of course. There's been important things. One big testimonial for that group of players. Food bank would be absolutely. I couldn't think of anything better. Unless Vinny was involved and you want to do something for the homelessness again, I'd be fine with that too. But something for food bank because their contributions alongside City Matters in 1894, given what's happened with tickets and other social matters regarding City fans, have been nothing short of exceptional as well too. So,
Definitely.
Legends and farewell. Send off for Walker. Oof. Maybe in a nightclub in Yorkshire, but that's about it, mate.
In Sheffield, come on.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. I think that's something we'd look at back in maybe 10 years' time, and enough water's gone under the bridge where we just sort of let it go. I'm not saying he'd get any sort of what's the rule? I mean, I don't know if it's like a law, but they say you really need to do 10 years at a club before you can be considered testimonial, can't you?
Yeah.
Unless you do something remarkable
at the end of the day, he's still one of our legends, whatever you might say, because he's been brilliant for us. I don't care. Anyone that has a problem with Walker, it's got nothing to do with his football. At the end of the day, he's done brilliant for us, and that's what we need to remember him by. End of.
Yeah.
End of. He's got his own personal problems. Let him. So it's like, let's face it, he's not as bad as Ryan Giggs, what he did.
Let's not go near there, Alan.
Exactly.
Anything else got your attention, lads?
No.
Did you guys touch on Rodri a little bit? I didn't catch the beginning.
Yeah,
no, I did flag a comment with I think it was Kathy before. She said, that Rodri had been injured, but I don't know. I think it was always going to be Pep's intention to not playing the full amount of minutes.
Yeah.
I also think that
At the end of the day,
I think what people forget is that he's very prone to being re-injured really quickly. Do you know what I mean? There is that likeliness after that kind of injury that you can get a small injury afterwards.
Like,
so
like
I think
this fitness he's had the
minutes
last
is
few
best
weeks,
thing to
he's
do.
been good, but it's like know your limits with him, basically. Yeah, you've got to know your limits.
Yeah, definitely. But I also think, we have seen glimpses of him being the old Rodri, but they have just been glimpses. We haven't seen enough of that into a proper season to know whether or not he's ever going to be the Rodri we fully know and remember. I think as part of us have to accept that he may not come back as the old Rodri, and where that's he can only he comes back as a small sample size, or he ever does 60 minutes going forward. That's something we may just have to accept. Do you know what I mean? That's just the way things go with injury sometimes. And he's 29. He's not, he's not a kid anymore. In the respects of a player. You know what I mean? Injuries take longer to get over, especially that injury. So
I'll be honest with you. If he had one of those seasons where he only plays about maybe between 2,500-3,000 minutes or something compared to the 4,500 he was playing, I'm kind of okay with that.
Yeah.
Because again, it's just taking precautionary steps because we want to absolutely make sure that we get the same player back again.
Correct.
We can't also forget what Van Dijk had to deal with too, because he took a while to come back, but now he seems to be back at what he was before.
I will say this: doing an ACL was bad news in the 90s when Paul Lake did it in the 80s and 90s, because he never really came back. He played on after his first one and did it again at Middlesbrough when I was there that night. So it just at the end of the day, it's a serious injury, and we'll just hopefully we'll see him play games.
Here's a familiar sight. City League TV's back. How are you, mate? Hope you've been well. Give me a shout if you want to jump on the channel, mate. I can send you a link if you want to jump on for a little bit. It's not much else. I mean, apart from the game against Al Hilal, there wasn't really anything much we could talk about. I mean, it only feels like the rest of Europe are just starting to sort of kick on now that it's the new fiscal year and contracts are coming through. And I don't know, is there anything sort of outside of City that's taken your, got your attention? Basically, I know the sort of talk at the moment sounds like Arsenal might be in for Berriese from Palace, but I don't know. There's some ones that stand out that I don't know. I still think we're kind of in a little bit of a slow news week at the moment.
Can we talk about South Africa kicking your ass in the world cricket?
No, because we're talking about football.
I knew you'd say that.
That's all right. I'll wait 6 months and we'll have the same chat about the Ashes. So yeah.
All right, no worries. We might have a show. I think we might Me, Rich, and you can.
It's a football show, Alan. It's a football show.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to start your own channel called the Mancunian Stumps, let me know. Yeah.
All right. We can do that, and we'll organise it. Me, you, and Rich. We can have a good debate.
Lamia says here, do you think Oscar Bob will get a chance this year? I think he will, just because the dedication that he shows, to wanting to be the best is. Yeah. I think that's part of the reason why Pep keeps him around. Has anybody seen the Oscar Bob documentary as well? In regards to his recovery from his injury.
Good.
No, very good.
Yeah, it's on my watch list.
Yeah,
I will say just about Oscar Bob. I actually do have some reservations about Oscar Bob.
Why?
The reason I have reservations is just because, he broke his leg last season, didn't he? And then it took obviously a while to recover from that. And then we were expecting him back in January. He didn't come back. And then by the time he got back into playing any sort of games, it was towards the end of the season. And even then, didn't look great. He's had moments in the Club World Cup. But there's something that tells me there's something not quite right, if I'm honest. There were rumours that actually City were looking at trying to loan him out, and he said no. I've got a feeling that might come back up during this transfer window.
I hope not.
I think the problem for Bob is that he's just not. I think you think about the competition that he's got on the right. He's got Savio, he's got Foden, he's got Cherky.
He's better than Savio.
Again, I don't want to get into who's better players. I just want to go into who's in front of him at the moment, and I just think he hasn't shown that when he's come on that he's back to his best yet, and maybe a loan to kind of get to playing regular football for a team might not be a bad shout, just to kind of get some more minutes in him.
Do you also factor in that obviously I think the injury it probably couldn't have come at a worse time for him as well, given the fact that he was probably the most informed player going into last season. The intentions were he was going to be a huge part of the attack and to an extent the midfield as well. To lose that as well, I think that was it was such a loss of momentum coming out of preseason and going into those first few matches of the season that I think it's one. Some people say it's one thing when a player gets injured; it's another thing when they get injured when they're at the peak of their form as well, because that's not the way in which you want to lose your form or come off the crest of that wave, basically. And I think it's going to be difficult. And to be honest, actually, like when you watch the documentary, we'll talk a little bit about the psychology of the injury as well too. And I've said before for many, many years, I felt like there were certain players that we have in our squad that for them, when they get an injury, it's very psychological for them as much as it is a physical thing. I mean, we've seen the manner in which Jack Grealish has come off the pitch when he knows he's got an injury. We've seen, the big one stood out for me was John Stones when he got that injury in the Centurion season. He was never the same again because he was so worried about repeating the hamstring injuries or whatever the leg injuries that he was susceptible to at that time. So I can kind of understand where it comes from. Where some play, De Bruyne. There's players out there that are very, very concerned about, is it going to happen again? And I do hope that Bob's not in that position. From what he says in the documentary, it does seem like he's ready to go. But I think given the fact that he has such a serious injury with a broken leg, and to be honest, I think it's probably glad he had a broken leg because bones repair a lot. In terms of athletes, bones repair a lot faster than ligaments and muscles do anyway. So that's always a good thing. But I think also having that setback on top of the setback as well, because remember a few months ago he had one. I think didn't help as well. That's probably going to exacerbate the anxiety or the doubt that you might have in terms of playing as well. So unfortunately, for that reason, important. Yeah, I think for that reason, I think that's just going to slow his process or the progress in terms of him getting ready again. I think it's going to slow it down just a fraction. But if I think the proof will be there if he's there in the squad when we play the travelling squad when we go to Wolves, in mid-August. Then it just proves that Pep has intentions for him. He does see something serious in this player that he thinks he's going to be a big part in terms of his next wave of success. There's not much else there for me to convince me otherwise to say that he needs to go on loan. I don't know if it will help him in a way. I think he wants to be a part of this squad because I think maybe in some ways it might be he can learn as much at a team like City, just being around the players as much as he's been at another club, playing around another bunch of players who may not be able to share that same level of expertise, that experience, and things like that. So these are all massive underlying factors, and I just think it's But Jack says he's been so unlucky. I said, mate, that injury couldn't have come at a worse time. Could not have come at a worse time. And sometimes you have to slow the process down in terms of getting them ready. I hate that word process, but we have to slow. Sometimes you have to slow it down before you can speed it up again. So it'll take time. And Oscar Bob, I think, will be back to some level of the form that he was in about 12 months ago.
And the other thing I think that might just delay him is what I said beforehand, is that the competition that's in front of him right now. And I know that Oscar Bob can play a false nine or pretty much anywhere across that front. But there's just so much competition right now. You've got Mamouche as well. It's just so difficult. And for me, I would have tried to get rid of the likes of Bernardo Silva, Gundo, Kovacic, and Kev. Only one of them for me could stay. The rest, I think, needed to go. Because I do feel that with the likes, if you want to get Bob in the team, then some of these players have to go. Yes, I agree, we need some experience, but you also need legs. And I think, as you said earlier on, and you both said in fairness, that you don't expect us to go and win the league. Well, if we're not expected to win the league, and don't get me wrong, I want to challenge, but I just also think that you can't keep having Bernardo Silva and Gundo in the midfield together. That for me, you can have one of them maybe, but you can't continue to have that going forward.
I said that earlier because that caused the problem yesterday.
Yeah, it did. And that's where I do have some reservation. Now, Pep is not above criticism, because I think on the channel, like, sometimes we do criticise Pep, where it's justified.
We're entitled to.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I think Pep is still the best manager in the world right now. But the criticism I gave him earlier for the subs, but I also give him the criticism of, he also seems to want to hang on desperately to these players that, yes, have done so much for him. Yeah. But you can't keep relying on them, because if you have too many of them in the team, the legs aren't there.
Yeah. Don't say too loudly, Ozzy, because you might get accused of saying Pep out by a certain person that's not on the channel today.
I don't want Pep out. I don't. Honestly, that is not where I'm going with this.
I agree.
For me,
way too much credit in the bank. Way too much credit in the bank.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I think we'll wrap it up in a couple of minutes anyway. But was there anything else needs to be discussed or anything?
I'm going to bed. I'm shattered.
Yeah,
that's
fair enough. Ozzy, what have we got coming up the rest of the week? Because I think I'm out for Thursday night chat. But what's the plan for that?
Yeah, we are a little thin on the ground by the looks of it, because you can't make it. I don't know what Alan's schedule's like.
Friday morning to Thursday night your time.
Yeah.
Don't
worry about it. We can discuss it.
Thursday night chat will probably be the usual around about 9:30. Don't be surprised if Martin's got the waffle show on Friday afternoon as well too. So keep an eye out for those as well. We're not exactly shutting down yet for the season, because we are still keeping ourselves open for any ingoings or incomings or outgoings in terms of the club and signings. Obviously, we're always on standby if 115 ever comes out, so we're always ready for that. So besides all that, just keep an eye out. We'll keep everybody notified when shows are coming up, of course. Where can they socials? Where can they find us, Ozzy? X, Insta.
It's all on the bottom.
Yeah, that's right, isn't it? It's all on the bottom. Yeah, I'm still getting used to this whole hosting thing. Yeah.
Just let you know, Rich is going to the UK tomorrow morning.
That's right. Yes,
indeed.
Yeah, Rich has said he'll probably be halfway over Azerbaijan by the time we do the show. So he's probably going to be out for a little bit as well.
Yeah.
He's flying. Weirdly enough, he's actually flying with my employer at Qantas, so he's hoping to get seats up in the pointing end. So fingers crossed, mate. We'll see what we can do for you anyway. But until then, we'll probably look forward to seeing you all back here for Blues Down Under the same time next week. Of course, back with Thursday night chats, and we'll go from there. Until then, just in closing, I hope we're all not as hot under the collar anymore as we were, say, about 24 hours ago. But at the end of the day, we can take a lot more positives than we can take negatives from these 4 matches in this tournament. But at the end of the day, we can look at it and we can say, we can say there's good things to take out of this, and I'm so excited for the season. I think there's a lot for us to chase. There's a good chance that we can be competing again a lot sooner than we expected maybe 9 months ago, basically. So nothing but positives to take out of this. Never mind the disappointing results. You can't be perfect all the time, and we've got to accept the fact that, yes, it is going to be a bit more of a struggle. We're still trying to sort some things out, but there's nothing but good things going forward at the moment. And I'm sure being the club the city is, we'll get that. We'll figure them out longer than we'll be asking questions anyway. So until then, I'm your host, Patrick. That's Alan. That's Ozzy. This is the Mancunian way. And we'll look forward to seeing you again on the next one. And always and forever, up the Blues. Go on, City.
See you later, guys.
There you guys.